And it's my great pleasure now to invite onto the stage Sanjeev Sanyal, who's a member of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister. No doubt was listening to some of the suggestions that are being made as to how to take India to 8% and further. Is a set fine? I guess so. Yeah. So Sanjeev Sanyal, you're a member of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister. Now, there's this clear mission 2047 that's being worked about. I mean, is it a dream? Is it our destiny? That's some of what we are going to talk about. A lot of the experts you've been talking to are saying there's a confluence of factors right now that is potentially working that could transform India's entire trajectory. It's already happened. A lot of the work has been done. A bunch of reforms have taken place. Infrastructure has been built. A few more changes need to be made. And then India can be on a trajectory that leads it towards prosperity. Are you a believer in that? Presumably you are, if you're the member of the Prime Minister's.
Well, yes and no. So let me explain to you.
Oh, there's a possible no in that also.
No, because you see, people think somehow this is, there's something natural about growing at very high rates. It's not. It has to be earned, and that requires consistent policy. So let me tell you why I'm very positive. Because finally, you see, the economy has reached a critical mass where the compounding process is now going to flick in our favor in a massive way. So allow me to talk you through this. When we started our journey in 1991 as a reformed economy, we were only 260 billion as a nominal USD economy. It then took us 16 years to hit our first $1 trillion. Then it took another 7 years to hit the second $1 trillion, which we only managed to hit as recently as 2014-15. And it should have taken 5 years to hit the next $1 trillion, lost 2 years in COVID, so yet another 7 years. So it's only as recently as 2021-22 where we managed to hit $3 trillion. The next $1 trillion has only come in 3 years. This financial year, we will hit $4 trillion. And the next $1 trillion will come in 26 months. So the point I'm making is this compounding process is very powerful if we keep it going. And if even at current kind of levels, we will end up with somewhere in the range of $30 trillion by 2047.
So the secret is to keep it going.
Absolutely. Therefore, I always get very concerned about people getting fussed about 8% GDP growth rate this year somehow. No. This is about compounding without slipping up. And so it requires lots of continuous supply side reforms, whether it's from the government side, whether it's getting ease of doing business, building the infrastructure. We need the private sector to come and invest. So all of those things need to be there. And this is the next part. You have to sustain this without macroeconomic instability. Do remember what happened to the Asian tigers of the 1990s. They too, for some years, managed to keep very high growth rates. And then their financial system blew up. And various other bad things happened in the Asian crisis. And Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, all these countries never came back. I mean, they're still growing, but they just don't have that energy ever again. So the point is, never ever endanger macroeconomic stability, whether it's on fiscal side, your financial side, your external accounts, and you have to keep investing in the supply side of the system. And of course, for social stability, you also have to make sure the very poorest get direct support to keep the absolute poverty is taken care of. So this compounding process is key. In some years, it'll be a little higher. So last year, we got lucky, we got 8.2%. Am I going to struggle and push somehow to get it to 8%? No. It should come within the natural flow of things. So if I'm going to expend fiscal energy to keep it at 8%, no. So if you see our forecast, we are okay with it coming down to 7.2%. Why? Because under the current global situation, we can't export in the way China was exporting in the decade of the 2000s. If I can't export at that speed and I force the economy to grow at 8% plus, then at some point my current account will begin to bleed. So you see, I have to therefore be okay, given the you see, you have to drive the car as fast as you can, but according to the conditions of the highway.
So the important part of what you said, and this is absolutely correct, whether it's for an individual investing their personal money or whether it's for a country, the longer you can grow at a certain rate,
Yes.
the longer you can keep on doing it, the more prosperous you're going to end
Absolutely.
up being. And if you don't, then the examples of Brazil and some of the Asian countries and all
Yes.
there, you hit a middle income trap, all sorts of horrible things end up happening. Why did China achieve what it did? It was because it was able to grow at those rates,
Absolutely.
maybe even higher rates for a
So,
very long period of
good
time.
times will also come. The world economy goes through cycles. At the time when the world economy suddenly begins growing for whatever reason, we will hit those 9% growth rates. But don't try and do it when the world is not growing.
But the good news here in this, from an Indian point of view, is that if you look at since economic reforms, okay, you had a long period where India wasn't growing at the rates it should, but from the 91 time till now, it's been what, nearly 30 years, 32 years, we have grown at 5%, 6%, 7%.
Yes, and that
fairly consistently.
absolutely.
What that also means is that if you can keep on doing that when your economy is a $4 trillion economy, the amount of extra product that is being created, the amount of extra economy that is being added to your economy becomes larger with every passing
Absolutely.
year.
And remember,
you're adding $300 billion every single year, and that starts to grow.
Now at some stage by the end of the decade, we'll be hitting $1 trillion or almost $1 trillion into the early 30s. You see? Now we are hitting $1 trillion in 26 months. The next run will be 18 months, and so on. So, it just compounds out very fast. People don't realize how powerful. And importantly, our population has stopped growing. It's growing at, 0.4% or thereabouts. And even that is not because of birth, but because we are living longer. So, population not really growing, economy growing at this compounding pace. That's how China managed to get from a per capita income, which was very similar to ours in 1990, to where it got here. It's compounding.
Right. When you're looking at the factors behind that, 2-3 things happen. If you are adding $1 trillion to your economy, even $500 billion to your economy, you will have the money to do things like infrastructure.
Yes.
You will also have the money then to take care of the people below the poverty line, because that is obviously important.
Yes.
You need
And
to be able
create
to have
the
welfare.
jobs.
That's what I was about to come to. Now, so some of the stuff will happen. You'll have the money. Where are you going to find the money for what are called freebies unkindly? It's actually support sometimes to people who...
Well, it depends what it is. Sometimes if it is directed and targeted, it is support. If it is a generic thing, which is why I'm not a big fan of universal basic income. Because, you spray bulleting resources, then it is a freebie.
What exactly is the difference? The universal basic income, yes, applies to everybody, but India is giving support to a very large number of people when it comes to free food, grain,
So
for
that's what I'm saying.
example,
When it's something at the really bottom, where people really need that cushion, then it's fair enough. I mean, if I am giving Nal Se Jal, let's say, people need drinking water. But it's not clear to me that you spray bullet any and everything. Free bus travel to people of one segment of population. Not clear to me that that's a great use of resources.
So the point that we've been hearing from many of the experts is that, look, try and keep taxation low and stable. Don't increase it too much. You don't really need to do something crazy to go out and raise lots of money because, as you yourself said, you don't want to be particularly fiscally adventurous to start with. So you need
Yes,
X
but it
amount of money.
requires a certain amount of restraint. So, for example, you saw COVID, right? During COVID, you will remember huge amount of pressure on the Indian authorities, and me personally, in the press, from Nobel laureate economists and so on, saying that you must spend more, go out there, do whatever you need to do on the monetary fiscal side, and we were much more restrained, and yet we kept the system going. By using much more supply side oriented policies. We guaranteed the payments in the system. So we, like everybody else here in the UK as well, were concerned that the payments in the system will jam up, the cash flow in the system. That's really the fear. And then once the cash flow jams up, everything blows up. So other countries gave out these huge amounts of stimulus checks to keep the cash flow going. What we did, we went to the MSMEs and 80% of their payments were guaranteed by us. It turned out because we guaranteed the system, nobody actually went bust. So for a very little amount of money, we managed to keep the cash flow flowing during the COVID period. So with a much simpler, cheaper process, we kept cash flows going. And then, because we had been restrained in our fiscal effort, when the system opened up, we had resources to pump into things like infrastructure. And that is how we reflated the economy. So it is, policies matter, that's the point I'm making, and restraint, particularly in the face of difficulty, matters. Now, coming to your point, do we have fiscal resources? Yes, we do. But that doesn't mean that we go out there and sort of squander it, number one. Two, as Surjit also mentioned, we need to do tax reforms, direct tax reforms, other kinds of tax reforms as well. We need to simplify our system. And as more and more people come into the tax system, more people pay taxes. Ironically, it becomes radically easier for us to simplify it, because now paying personal income tax becomes the default in society. So all the exemptions, exceptions, all the complicated rules that were really created to try and force people in don't have to be done, because this is now generally the default. And you can do radical simplifications.
And a lot of data is there as well. We've just had the elections and the result that was thrown up. Now, if you went around and you spoke to a lot of people, how are the economic policies of the government affecting the people? Two clear messages came out. One, the welfare schemes are clearly having an impact and are resonating, and people like them. That's the good news. Bad news is that a lot of people are concerned about unemployment. Unemployment is an issue, and if the strength of India is going to be the potential demographic dividend that we could get from a very large number of people in the working population, if you do not continue to have enough jobs for people, that becomes potentially a negative factor. Also could have a major political price, as we are seeing. What are you going to do about that, unemployment?
So unemployment, first of all, the necessary condition for creating jobs has got to be the same point, growth. So do not get distracted from anything that interferes with rapid growth, because there is no example in history of large numbers of jobs being sustainably created without growth. Okay? So do not interfere with the growth machine. That's the first thing. Secondly,
so in other words, just having more government jobs and giving
No.
that's not going to have an impact on the economy. It's probably going to be negative.
You're sucking out resources we could have used to build better infrastructure or more, a hospital or something like that. So anyway, those resources were going to be used. When instead of creating government jobs, I build a bridge, I'm still creating jobs. So the point is, therefore, not to get swayed by this. Secondly, there are parts of the government that do need to be expanded. I agree with that. But there are also parts of the government that need to be shrunk. So that's something every government should do all the time anyway. My point is this. Very often, this whole debate then, first of all, ignores the growth part, then goes into a long conversation about something called labor-intensive industries, and very quickly spirals into usually some Luddite idea. Why does this happen? Because it's basically like saying that India has lots of people, so therefore we should only play team sports. No, we should play the entire array. Services, we should also do manufacturing, because remember, many of the people who make these kinds of cases then say, no, we shouldn't do manufacturing, we should focus on services, because supposedly it creates more jobs. No, we have to be in the whole range. We're a large country with all kinds of skill levels in the system. We have to grow the system as fast as we can.
You could have additional focus on some individual sectors that are both good for growth and potentially are also employment generating. Tourism is the obvious example.
Yes, absolutely. But that should be done in its own right. What I'm trying to say is, do not get caught in these outdated Luddite sort of ideas that, oh no, this sector generates more jobs. Many kinds of totally cutting edge stuff creates jobs. Tourism, whether it's cutting edge or not, we can have a debate, but there are all kinds of sectors that create jobs, and there are all kinds of people with all kinds of skills. Now, in this context, let me say, I have a somewhat different view. I have long argued that there are no such thing as poor people, there are only poor places. Let me explain what I mean by this. Let's say there are two brothers. They grow up in Muradabad. Okay? One chap stays back in Muradabad. One chap goes to Dubai. After 3-4 years with the same skill, everything, same background, the Dubai person begins to earn a lot more than the person who left behind him. So why does this happen? There's nothing different about them. It has got to do with getting places to grow again. And in India, we need to get certain parts of the country to grow again. And a lot is talked about north-south divide and all that. Actually, they're all irrelevant. The real divide in India is east-west. Yeah? I come from the eastern part of the country. We have not seen the kind of growth the western half of the country has done. Whether the northern, northwest or south, west does not matter to me. I need to get eastern UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, West Bengal in particular going. And what is needed? We need to have better infrastructure put in there. We need to have dynamic leadership. Some of those states, Odisha was one of the poorest states in the country, and look at where it's come. I mean, how well it's done. So good investments, sensible policies matter.
Right. One last question I think we have time for. We were just hearing Dr. Bhalla saying this also, that the obvious next major set of reform measures that have to be rolled out. It's not that the government's not been doing it, it's been working in that direction. But that's a logical way to get the economy functioning, employment moving up, getting animal spirits in the private sector, do more and more of these ease of doing business reforms, right? Remove the old laws, clean up the entire
Enforcement
system.
of contracts.
Enforcement of contracts. Don't have cases that linger on for 2 decades or 3 decades. We heard it from Chris Rogers. Why would a company come to India if you feel that if I get into a problems in some court case, it's going to last for 20 years? This should be the obvious next focus.
Absolutely. So from 1991 to now, it was about getting the Indian state out of things it should not do. Now it has got to be going forward to get the Indian state to deliver on things it should do. Therefore, we've got to do stuff on judicial reforms, and that, of course, the government doesn't have to. Judiciary, most of it has to be done by the judiciary itself. We need to reform.
So the government could take back a lot of the, half, more, 50% of the cases.
Well, actually, the number is not so large, and I can debate that with you. But yes, government is a significant litigant. Administrative reforms.
Yes.
We need to get serious about municipal delivery of services.
Yes.
Right. So, a large part of the administration, if you look, the junior most segments do the things that are things like the district magistrate, one of the most junior people in the bureaucracy, and yet they are on the ground the most powerful. Yet in the scale of things of the administration, they are the juniorest most people, only 5-6 years into the service. We've got to actually flip it the other way. The senior most people should be actually municipal commissioners. A reasonably senior person should be district magistrate, and so on. So there is a lot of things we need to do in rejigging the way we think of administration. Our administrative system, it is oriented towards control. It is not oriented towards service delivery.
Okay, presumably you're not going to tell us what exactly is coming in the 100-day plan, but we hope to hear a lot of this in the 100-day plan.
Well, it'll take more than 100 days, but there are many things that should be there, yes.
All right. Sanjeev, Sanyal, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.